everybody. Welcome to another episode of Optica, where we invite you to open your eyes and see what God is doing. As always, if it's been a blessing to you, please subscribe or share with your friends. And today, I want to talk about a subject that actually has been a part of the national conversation for over 10 years, but I think it merits a second look. I want to talk about the Evangelical Industrial Complex and celebrity pastors. The Evangelical Industrial Complex and celebrity pastors. Now, look, I didn't invent this term. Over 12 years ago in Christianity Today, a good friend of mine, Sky Jethani, wrote about the Evangelical Industrial Complex and the rise of celebrity pastors and the rise of the promotion of this kind of cult of celebrity and the rise of promoting profits and influence and platforms over theological substance, over relationships. Let's call it a commercialized view of the faith. We started peddling a commercialized view of the faith. And you might ask, why are you talking about this now? I'm talking about this now because I feel it continues to be pervasive, not just in the United States of America, but I think this evangelical industrial complex has gone global. In many of our conferences, in many of our media, in many of our publishing platforms, when we talk about influencers, sometimes we're not really looking for substance, theological substance, spiritual maturity. We're looking for hits and fame. Some years ago, I read a book by a former president where he says that one of the great temptations of modern time is an insatiable hunger for more. An insatiable hunger for more. A lot of times when we talk about this insatiable hunger for more or avarice or greed, we think money. And yes, we do have a greed and avarice problem around money. But increasingly, in the evangelical church, there is this insatiable appetite for more followers, for more platforms, for more likes. And the question is that new? Obviously, it's not new. We've always had famous people in the faith. The gospel itself says that the fame of Jesus spread throughout the region. And so it's not just that we have a problem with fame. Fame brings its challenges. I think our problem is that we have a problem with the hunger for fame over character, the hunger for fame over substance. And so what are some of the criticisms that I want to share with you? I want to invite you to think about it. And perhaps you, like I, have seen many people seduced by the evangelical industrial complex, insatiable appetite for more platforms, more influence, more exposure. Number one, the evangelical industrial complex prioritize the bottom line over authentic faith. Think how many times you've been to a conference or a convention and that small church pastor, that faithful pastor, whoever he or she might be, their narrative has been told, their narrative of faithfulness, their narrative of stick-to-itiveness, their narrative of journeying with a community over the years. Now, to be clear, it's happening more and more. I think we've learned a lesson that in our appetite to follow celebrities, we've also followed wrong models that have led to, regrettably, tragically, not just criticism, but scandal. And so my question to you is, when do you become aware? Or better yet, how do we become aware that we've been captured by this insatiable appetite for more that is often cultivated by the evangelical industrial complex? One of the questions we have to ask ourselves is, what are we prioritizing? Is it influence? Is it money? Is it the bottom line? Or is it authentic, enduring faith? Secondly, Are we prioritizing superficial understandings over a deep faith? Socrates once said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." I don't know how many times I've come across, perhaps like you, these little cliches and these little tweets and these little reflections that are a mile long and an inch deep. Because sometimes we substitute in our insatiable appetite for more, we substitute depth for a superficial exposure. And so, if we prioritize superficial understandings of faith over a deep, analyzed, reflective faith, we might just have become victims, perhaps promoters, of an insatiable appetite for more that is part of the evangelical industrial complex. Third, do you find yourself part of the cult of celebrity worship? You make idols of speakers and influencers. Now, let me be clear. I think influencers have their space. I think we need platforms for deep reflection and thoughtful conversation. I mean, I'd be hypocritical if I have a platform and I have a YouTube and a podcast and then say, hey, people should share what they're thinking. What I am saying, is it thoughtful? Is it reflective? Catch this. Intentions matter. Intentions matter. Said another way is, why do we do what we do? Are we sharing because we want substantive content out there? Are we sharing because we want to engage in deliberative conversation that both deepens and broadens our faith? Or are we sharing because we're caught up in the cult of celebrity? We want to be idolized. We want to be followed. Now, look, I am an evangelical. I appreciate evangelicalism. I am, truth be told, a follower of what we call the Bebington Quadrilateral. Those four principles that I think rightly define the deepest parts and most reflective parts of evangelicalism. But for too long, this kind of deep-rooted evangelicalism has been overwhelmed, has been replaced, and in some places displaced by this evangelical that has a cult of celebrity and that seeks to make idols and icons of people. And so, the evangelical industrial complex prioritizes the bottom line of celebrity and money over authentic faith, prioritizes superficial understandings of faith rather than an examined faith, and it prioritizes a cult of celebrity where we seek to make icons and idols. And finally, and this is no small point, oftentimes, regrettably, the evangelical industrial complex seeks to silence voices that challenge the dominant evangelical narratives. You know that you have succumbed to the temptation of the cult of celebrity or to the evangelical industrial complex insatiable appetite for fame or influence when there's no room for other voices, when questions can't be raised, when somebody posits something and there's no space to look at it another way. To be clear, evangelicalism has done a great deal of good around the world. Our good deeds, our service, our humanitarian assistance, our evangelism, our sharing the gospel in the most vulnerable places. But this is not that. This is using the gospel as a personal platform. The evangelical industrial complex replaces altars of worship to God for platforms and brandings of individuals. You know what my deepest concern is? Is that we're exporting this to the next generation. That somehow we have replaced faithfulness with fame. That we have a higher value and we give more authority to someone who's famous than someone who is faithful. You see, the fact of the matter is that the evangelical industrial complex has a disproportionate impact in shaping how the public views evangelicalism. For better or for worse, most of society views evangelicalism through the lens of its media personalities, its major conferences and conventions, its best-selling book authors. And let me be clear, that has its place. Many of these conventions have been a blessing to me personally. My question is a deeper one. What's at the root of many of us evangelical pastors and leaders and members of churches when we substitute deep, authentic, rooted faith with an insatiable appetite for celebrity, fame, and influence? You see, we're living in a time and a place where Jesus is disappearing from the scene. And my question today, and it's a complicated answer beyond a podcast and beyond 10 minutes of conversation, but that's what I want to invite us to think and pray about, is are we part of the evangelical industrial complex in ways that reflect Jesus? Is what we do and how we do it and why we do it, I'll say that again, is what we do, how we do it, and why we do it reflective of the character of Jesus? Or is it in the end feeding our narcissistic ambitions to be famous, to be well known? I, for one, have to struggle with that question over and over. And I ask you to prayerfully and deliberatively wrestle with it too. In what ways am I living out my faith publicly that reflect the character of Jesus, a humble servant who transformed the world? And in what ways is it reflective of an appetite that does not reflect Jesus? Just some questions to think about. Till the next time, I'm Gabe Salguero, and this has been Optica, where we invite you to open your eyes and see what God is doing.